Welcome to Alliance on the Move. It is so good to be with you guys entering your living rooms, your personal spaces on this program. I'm Beverly Alert and I'm sitting in for your regular host, Kathy Hughes, Member of Parliament. And of course, I have on the technical side, General Secretary of the Alliance for Change, Member of Parliament, Sherrod Duncan. On this program this evening, we're going to be discussing two very important topics, and you may want to take this opportunity now to call up a friend, call a neighbor, send a message, a WhatsApp message, or so on to someone who you know is interested in what is happening within the Alliance for Change and on national issues for Guyana. Because on this program, we're going to be discussing the present escalation of the border crisis. And very importantly, also, we're going to be looking at responding to some of the statements made by Dr. Vincent Adams. We have, of course, two eminently qualified gentlemen to
Breaking up.
still is an examiner at the George Washington University, experience in global international accounting, strategic management. He was an IRS
Mm,
agent.
I think we lost Beverly. Uh-oh. Think we lost Beverly.
It's looking that way. Brother Sherrod, can you hear us? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, today we've had internet difficulties and MP Beverly is knocked out. So with us today is Brother Dr. Vincent Adams, who all know of, and all of United States Department of Energy and the Department of Environment know of him, and they all want him back in Washington. I'll say no more. So we're lucky to have him on. Thanks to MP Beverly for having me on today and this program. Greetings, hello, and salams. Next 8 days will be the blessed 18th anniversary, repeat, 1/8 anniversary for the AFC.
Wow.
October 29, 2005, three visionaries, Honorable Raphael Trotman, Honorable Kemraj Ramchatan, and the late Honorable Sheila Holder, along with the team, formed the AFC for the 2006 general elections. Today, our condolences and sympathies for the loss of lives in both Israel and Gaza, and our best wishes for a speedy recovery of all the injured persons. We do need a ceasefire, humanitarian aid, and all hostages to release. I will focus today on Venezuela, which is very, very topical. Venezuela is at our border or listeners, and it is very serious. And I will share with you some information with evidence. The Minister of Defense, repeat, the Minister of Defense on Thursday, today is Saturday, in his Twitter feed said, the son of Venezuela is born in Essequibo. It is our land, and in the conscience of Venezuelans rests the hope of seeing it definitely without claims, limitations, or protests. Our greatest desire, the minister says, is to see it linked to the whole of the map of the country as it has been since independence with our national day. This is the release on Twitter, and that's a general with his cap and his hand. It went on to say, it is immoral and unequivocal voice of the Commander Chavez. We affirm the Essequibo territory belongs to us in its entirety. Those are not my words. I am reading, ladies and gentlemen, the seriousness. This is the historical and legal truth that we will defend within the framework of the 1966 Geneva Agreement. That is good, because we are also adhering to the ICJ with the 1966 Agreement. The next words, ladies and gentlemen, is very key. It is the only peaceful and viable solution. So with all due respect, the last few words, the Geneva Agreement, and it is the only peaceful and viable solution, is the best words that I can read. Ladies and gentlemen, there are other clips that are going around showing Venezuelan in boats, their helicopters, all are being seen. The nation is at huge threat. There's mixed messages from our PPP government, with all due respect. Today is Saturday, and President Ali, 3 days, he spent 3 days. Today might be the end of the summit in Canada. Most leaders who have such a problem will be in their country, mobilizing a crisis management security team to include the opposition, civil society, and the trade unions. But sadly, there appears to be no wind in the sails of the President Ali and the second VP Jagdeo. Why? We do not know. They seem to be taking this very, very casually. One diaspora person in New York says it is the next Dubai with a Mutt and Jeff presidency. Today is Saturday. Kaicho News says GDF head visits border as Venezuela extends military operation. Kaicho News today said Chief of Staff Brigadier Omar Khan on Friday visited Ettering Bank, Cayuni River, Region 7, as the Venezuelan military heightened its presence and extends its operations further along its border with Guyana. You see, it's matching what the minister said in his speech on Thursday. Kaicha News went on to report that the Chief of Staff visit was not made known to the public, but residents of Ettering Bank were noticed on Friday morning Venezuelan soldiers moving down toward Caribisi with heavy artillery, large caliber machine guns used for land warfare. Ladies and gentlemen, those are the facts, and this is the map of where the operations of Venezuela are. It is very, very, very serious business. Venezuela is mobilizing at the border. They are doing war games and continuing their militancy over many years, plus the armed syndicatos. I will share with you, I went to Kuwait in August 2016, and I was close to a lot of ambassadors, including the Venezuelan ambassadors. When I met the Venezuelan ambassador in Kuwait in 2017, he brought to my attention the article on 23rd of October 2015 by iNews with the headline, Jagdeo considered slight concession of Guyana River territory to Venezuela. Imagine the Venezuela ambassador in Kuwait giving the Guyana ambassador in Kuwait an article including opposition leader and former President Baron Jagdeo says under his tenure, he would consider the option of surrendering parts of Guyana's riverine territory to Venezuela. Those are not my words. I'm reading the article. Jagdeo made the disclosure at a press conference on Friday afternoon, October the 23rd, where they disclosed some of his items and concern of the methods employed by President Granger on the issue of the solution. Also, they showed that article, the map of Guyana, but of course, we're missing a piece. That is given to me in Kuwait. Also given to me in Kuwait is Stabroek News. I kept it all. Stabroek News, October 24, 2015, headline, PPC government considered maritime channel for Venezuela to end controversy, Jagdeo. Ladies and gentlemen, these are some of the background I personally have seen and experienced. Many of you will see that picture, if you can see it, and it's myself and President Maduro. Yes, that's not a fake, that's a real picture, and that picture was on September the 10th, 2017 at 1:44 p.m. in Astana, Kazakhstan. We were both attending the OIC conference on science and technology, and I spoke with His Excellency Maduro from 1:44 to 2 p.m. We spoke on education, we spoke on science, we spoke on human development and the border issue. I have to be truthful. President Maduro told me the area is Venezuela's and he will work each day on something to get back the area. That is the promise from the president way back. I've submitted my report to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Venezuela has 112 embassies around the world. And I know from my experience serving in Kuwait and working with Saudi Arabia and Qatar and the Middle East, that all their embassies ambassadors are advocating every day with documents for the case. I have seen Venezuelans attending the OIC meeting with the 57 nations. President Maduro himself attends. He attends the African Union, 55 nations, all the representatives, the GCC 6 nations, because of their wealth and power in the oil and gas. They're constantly there. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, UAE, Oman, and Bahrain. Just October the 9th, today's the 21st. This is a Qatar news, Pennsylvania news in Qatar, showing the vice president of Venezuela meeting the emir. Normally, vice president meets vice president. That's the protocol. But this is Venezuela vice president meeting the emir of Qatar. And she is known as a hot pepper, very aggressive and very smooth and focused. Someone says she's a split personality. She's a fiery revolutionary, charismatic, sweetness wrapped up, all in little package. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the challenges we are faced in Guyana. In Kuwait, this picture is me and the ambassador of Venezuela at the Guyana embassy. He visited me very first. And at that meeting, he gave me the information. We have very, very good relationship. And of course, I did the reciprocal standard operating practice I visited the Venezuela embassy. We do need to reinforce our diplomatic move and be more politically involved, not only depending on the ICJ ruling. Venezuela is with a plan to tell their story in the social media, in the media, in personal visits. And that is what they're doing. They know, I was told that they know that the ambassador of Venezuela in Guyana submits his report, and they know Guyana is a divided nation. And it appears that the PPP is not taking this issue very seriously. Region 1, I'm reliably told, has a population of 26,000 Guyanese. Now about 25,000 or more Venezuelans are in Region 1. Region 3 is with about 20,000 Venezuelans. And I'm told all regions in Guyana, no exception, are with major social problems, especially in Berbice, with husbands putting their wives out and Venezuelans, ladies are moving in. Ladies and gentlemen, those of you in Guyana will know how many Venezuelan ladies are in the bars, in the nightclubs. There are even vendors at the border market. Can you imagine what will be the health and education and social crisis if this continues without the PPP government involvement? I'm reliably told that most arrivals are born Venezuelan natives. They are no Guyanese parents. However, the Guyanese arrivals that return, most are in support of the Venezuelans for the Essequibo area. Ladies and gentlemen, I can go on the security risk. We all know with respect the PPP appears to be transactional and they seem to have a laissez-faire attitude, and we are missing in action globally. With my experiences in Kuwait and the GCC area and the Middle East in particular, relationships are key. If we do not spend the time and build the relationships and present a case with a one-page show, tell, and know information repeated over and over, we need to do more. If not, we should not depend on the ICJ alone because we might be surprised. Sometimes in this life, not all truths are recognized. Sometimes the wrongdoers are set free. Sometimes the wrong becomes the right. It all depends on decision makers, decision making. So please, the ambassador, Odin Ishmael, who served in Kuwait and served in Venezuela, I asked him about Venezuela, and he said his impression that Venezuela is very determined to get the land back and they will never give up fighting. His Dr. Rodin Ishmael, the ambassador to Venezuela and the ambassador to Kuwait before my arrival, we kept in touch until he passed away. His regret was not being able to get enough support to have a joint economic commission for the border. That's way, way back when he served as an ambassador. Tomorrow is a very important day in Venezuela. It's the presidential primary elections, and they will choosing a single candidate to challenge President Maduro. And so the border is in their focus. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the information I have on Venezuela. I encourage you to please approach your PPP members of parliament, ministers, president, vice president, ministers. Let them know you're concerned. This is very, very serious. We should not only depend on the courts and on Exxon and the United States Southern Command. We need to show we are hungry. If not, common sense, no rocket scientists. If you're not hungry, cat can end up eating your dinner. This is the facts of life. I'm merely reminding Guyanese of the risk if we become too complacent and not total mobilization. Brother Vince, any comments from you on
Yeah.
that matter?
Thanks, Professor Shamir. Good night, Bubis, and the rest of the listeners across Guyana and probably across the globe. I just want to add, in terms of the consequences of the politics. Um, and I'm sure that many of you are aware of the war in the Ukraine,
Yes.
and this here could be a similar situation or a similar excuse. And as many of you may know, Russia, they probably had other reasons, but the reasons that they use for Crimea and for the eastern Ukraine, they invaded because they were mostly Russian connected people in Crimea and eastern Ukraine. So they said, those people basically belong to us. They speak our language and they've got our culture. So we're going to take back that part of the country. So that's where we are. They invaded and they've basically taken Crimea. And now, of course, we know what's happening. They've taken a large piece, a large chunk of eastern Ukraine. So here we are. We've got Venezuelans coming in, and for want of a better word, invading our nation, coming to live. And I don't think Guyana's always had a history of being very generous with accommodating other folks, who need a livelihood from the rest of the Caribbean. We had a bunch of St. Lucians, bunch of Barbadians, Trinidadians, etc. in the heyday of Guyana. We've always had open arms, but this here is a more serious matter. Remember, these Venezuelans, from the time you're born, you're taught that the Essequibo, which is two-thirds of Guyana, belong to Venezuela. You're taught that. And now the vice president, not the vice president, the president of Venezuela, Maduro, wants to up the ante now by even putting it to a referendum just to conform.
Yes.
It's these next steps that could drive us towards there. And it's very troubling when you hear that the government of Guyana is not taking this very seriously. And I looked at the vice president here a couple of nights ago, and to him, well, I don't know. Basically, to paraphrase, I don't know what the opposition is talking about, because some of these people have roots in Guyana who are coming. So he's looking at this thing here as if, well, they've got a legitimate reason to be here. They've got roots in Guyana, and to me, he's taking this thing very, very lightly. And I'm not saying that we should not again accommodate folks, but it has to be legitimate. It has to go through a process. It has to follow the law. Now, here's the other thing. Of course, you can tell why the vice president Jagdeo is promoting this kind of stuff, because we all know what is going to happen. The Kemraj, I think, mentioned that there's some shenanigans that could be, performed in terms of getting these people registered to vote and make them part of that voting bloc of the PPP. So all of this is in terms of the politics of having a bigger voting bloc for the PPP, and then giving Maduro an excuse for invading. And here's one of the biggest incentive for them to invade. All of the decades, of course, from time to time they would raise it, but now with oil, because even the starboard block and everything else that is offshore, that's what's driving this sudden interest or accelerated interest. And of course, as you have gold and diamond, and most of our mineral wealth are buried in the Essequibo region. So this here is serious. And I wish that our vice president and the rest of the government in place would take it much more serious. Again, all we are asking is for them to follow the law and follow the process. We're not asking the folks to stop coming. They could be accommodated, but the right set should be accommodated within the law, and it should be done in a planned and structured manner to protect the national security of this of Guyana. That's all we are asking. We're not saying to stop it. We are asking that it be done in to make sure that our security is protected.
Agree, Dr. Vince. I was just informed that the TV channel 8 did not carry the opening. So I just wish to remind audience who tuned in that the Minister of Defense in Venezuela made a release on Thursday on Twitter. Today is Saturday. And he said the son of Venezuela is born in Essequibo. It is our land, and the consequence of the Venezuelan rests the hope of seeing it definitely without claims, limitations, or protests. Our greatest desire is to see it linked as a whole to the map of the country as it has been since the war over national independence. In the immoral and unequivocal voice of our commander Chavez, we affirm the Essequibo territory belongs to us in its entirety. Ladies and gentlemen, those are not my words. I'm reading from the script of the minister. The Essequibo territory belongs to us in its entirety. This is historical and legal truth, and we will defend with the framework of the 1966 agreement. It is the only peaceful and viable solution. With respect those last two lines, the 1966 agreement and the only peaceful viable solution is the best statement in the whole other than his threats, which is happening. Kaicho News today reported that the Venezuelans are there with their armaments and they are in Etabang, and the Chief of the Defense, Omar Khan, is there yesterday. So hopefully we'll get more news. But we do hope that the government do take this very, very seriously. The president jutted off for 3 days in Canada for a summit. Summits are important. It was the first in Canada. But any nation with the problem of Venezuela at your border or everything else should be in Guyana with a crisis management team informing the opposition, civic leaders and the trade union, and mobilizing daily. There should be a crisis management on Venezuela every day. And all these ministers are jutting around the world. I wonder if they're spending their time to promote Guyana's interests with a show and tell one-page flyer. Not just go and have all the meetings, sitting and take a nice picture. That is good. Your presence is important, but we're hearing nothing about them promoting the Guyana side of the Venezuelan side, where 112 Venezuelan ambassadors are doing every day, including President Maduro and Vice President Delcy. So we are at a disadvantage on the global scene, and we should not only depend on the ICJ ruling. Yes, the U.S. Southern Commander is monitoring it, but we need to show a hunger on our side. There are rumors, I'm told, that Venezuelans are getting birth certificates. Yes, I'm told that the people who are coming mostly are not Venezuelans. And those who are coming all want that area to be on the Venezuelan side. But hopefully the government have all the security team and the money. They will send the intelligences and find out themselves. It is very, very dangerous. And ladies and gentlemen, Guyanese, please speak up to your representatives and the president and the second vice president and the prime minister and the minister. They must do more. All of our stake is in their hands. And rather than dancing in aircrafts, I've seen video where they're dancing in aircrafts. There are videos not seen by Tom, Dick, and Harry. I've seen it with my own eyes. The president dancing in aircraft, and we're having a problem at the border. This has to stop. There's a big birthday party today. The First Lady birthday is fine, but Guyana is at a crisis, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not an alarmist. I hope it is not trouble ahead, but there's all intelligence from that Minister of Defense statement, and they are following through. So we need to do better. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Vince, The
Yeah.
second vice president has been lambasting you and the public. Can you share with us your responses and oil and gas where we are?
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad I'm catching his attention. It's kind of funny watching him. When you get under his skin. Um, I thought that at one time he said he doesn't read what I write, but that's him. Today he says one thing and tomorrow he says another thing. We all see the videos when he was in parliament foaming from the mouth about he's going to renegotiate the contract and we've sold out the patrimony, and then when he gets in, he became a pussycat. He just succumbs to Exxon. So we know so nobody really takes him seriously, but nevertheless, the silliness of his comments is I guess it's just vintage Jack Dio. For example, he said, here it was, I was expressing as a citizen of Guyana, a normal citizen or a regular citizen, expressing my opinion about the judge's decision. With my technical expertise, I said the judge was a bad decision in her ruling. The last case that she ruled upon. I mean, that's my forte. I'm a specialist. I recognize. I said as far as I can see, the judge basically does not have the understanding. I'm just a regular citizen. Now, here's the same guy, the same Mr. Jadio, in the ruling, and he says that if he had said something like that, oh, the media would have been all over him. Now, here is what this guy has no shame, or he thinks that somehow that all these videos and things that he says would just disappear, or people are stupid. In the ruling by Judge Kissoon against the government, which they appealed, by the way, here's what he says.
Hello, MP Beverly. Welcome back.
Hey, Beverly.
Oh, thank you guys. Oh gosh, it's been crazy. Technical problems, but I've been listening to you guys, so please carry on, Dr.
Hey,
Bin.
you're in Guyana, so we empathize with you.
Thank you.
You're in Guyana under the
Under
PPPC.
the PPP regime.
Yeah. So
How we wish for the one and only Kathy Hughes in our ICT. We wish for those days.
so here so here's a guy who is who is getting out there and criticizing me for expressing my technical opinion about a judge decision. Here's the same guy who's the vice president, by the way, and former president.
Second
Has
vice
all
president. Correct. Second vice president.
or
Honorary
second
doctorate.
no
You
no no that's
you're
on
a first
paper.
rate. You're a
That's
first rate. So big
That's on
difference.
paper. That's on paper. We know who's the president, and we know who's calling the shots. And but here is a guy who can influence decisions from judges. I can't. Those judges probably doesn't even. He himself said he never. The same Jagdio said he doesn't read anything that I write when he was asked a question. But suddenly he has picked out this one to say he obviously is reading it. So of course we don't believe him. We know that he's reading everything. Um, but here's this same guy who has all the influence, and he can influence the judge and scare them. And this here, if this is not threatening language and to cause a chilling effect on the justice system coming from the vice president, I don't know what it is. What is? Here's what he said in the Judge Kissoon ruling against the government. He said, Judge Kissoon decision, when it said our courts have to make predictable decisions. Our courts have to make predictable decisions, and they are treading on murky waters. What statements could be more dictatorial, autocratic than that when a president says, compared to me saying that the judge made a mistake technically and expressing my technical as a normal regular citizen. Here's the guy again for the audience. Let me repeat again what he said. He said, our courts have to make predictable decisions. Who's who? I mean, I never heard in any judgment that decisions would be predictable. Then you don't need judges. If the decisions are predictable, why do you need judges? See, as usual, it doesn't make any sense. And The judges are treading in murky waters. This is a guy who leads the country. This is a guy who appoints judges. And up to now they're still holding up the appointment of the chancellor, and
Chancellor and the
so
Chief
this is a
Justice. Yes.
guy who has everything in his hands, and he's coming. Poor me, who's writing something. An ordinary citizen has no influence whatsoever. So that's the silliness of. Here's the other thing. He said, "Well, I'm a darling of the media." Well, I'm happy. It's a badge of honor to be called a darling of the media. But so maybe it's even envy that he's not called a media, because he's got a lot of names that the media calls him, and which is well deserved. So I've got some advice for him, Mr. Vice President. If you want to be called a darling of the media, you need to change your behavior. You need to stop abusing the media. You need to stop abusing and cussing down, and behave like a responsible leader of the country. So that's how you become, and be credible with your information too. Everything that comes out of my mouth is credible and could be. Yours is not credible. So why they have no respect for you? So you will never become a darling of the media. So my advice to you, if that's what you're striving towards, please follow my little ordinary normal advice. Please be nice to people to start with, and to be
Dr.
nice.
Vince, if I can come in here, one of the
Sure.
things he attempted to do was to sort of discredit your capacity to speak on matters of the environment. But I see here you have your PhD in environmental engineering from the University of Tennessee.
Yeah.
You did a 2-year, I think it was, you were a 2-year candidate for petroleum and geological engineering, University of Missouri, along with your master's in petroleum and geological engineering from Missouri, another master's in geology and hydrology from Ohio, and so on. And of course, the many accolades you would have earned and won over your 30 years in service at the Department of Energy. It was.
Yeah, well, that oops, oh no, it fell
So
off
you
there.
would have
Let
worked
me
with
put it back here.
congressmen, senators, governors, and so on. It
Here,
seems like we
first
have
of
quite a
all,
bit
this
of.
guy,
Bev, another piece of put in for Dr. Vince to get his PhD. He had to defend his dissertation that he wrote himself. He had a group of experts that questioned him, tea, breakfast, and dinner, front, back, and center. So he couldn't fake it. Nobody couldn't write the dissertation for him. Those are first-class degrees that we have.
Gentlemen, I think it is important that our audience know that Dr. Vince Adams personally developed the first set of equations, for designing sophisticated, internationally renowned air pollution control technology that's now being used to set emissions all across the world. So do you need somebody more eminently qualified to speak on matters of pollution and matters of the environment?
Here's the other thing. Here's the other thing, my good colleagues. First of all, again, I want to call out the stupidity of his statement. By the way, my resume is sitting in the president's office. Okay? Probably many copies. It's sitting right there in his office. So he's either lying or he's lazy to go look at it. And like you said, how could you say that somebody is not eminently qualified in environment to talk about the environment when they've got the highest degree you can get, on top of 30 years of experience at the highest level of the U.S. government?
Yes.
Here's where I saw just for it. He said I was just a project manager. Well,
no.
Let me educate or educate the vice president. I was at the highest level you can get in civil service. It was called the executive service of the United States government. We are the highest ranking government official, the equivalent, the civilian equivalent to the generals in the military. So we're the ones who conduct the day-to-day operations of the military. I was highly recognized by my peers internationally. I was the chairman of the largest environmental professional organization in the United States chapter of the International Organization for Professional Environmental Engineers. So my peers recognized me. I represented the United States at several conferences, chaired 2 major conferences. By the way, Professor, one of those was in Kazakhstan.
Oh, wow.
As that conference, the most modern city in the world and the most modern conference center in the world, Astana.
Yes, Astana. Yep.
So when he says these type of things, he sounds stupid. I've got a PhD in environmental engineering. I had two years of PhD coursework in petroleum engineering.
All accredited.
It's no honorary.
No honorary.
So I don't have to beg anybody to call me a doctor, even though
fuzzy does it. Duly accredited.
I've got a master's degree in petroleum and geological engineering. I've got a second master's in hydrogeology, and then I've got a degree, a fourth degree in civil engineering. So he sounds stupid when he says these type of things, So he tried to discredit. He doesn't even know what a project manager. He said, well, he was only a project manager. Project manager, where I came from, are highly recognized, renowned, highly accomplished individuals with PhDs. Most of them have PhDs. And in my chain of command, they had over hundreds of them reporting to me. So there's no disgrace about being a project manager. He tries to this because he's so ignorant as to what a project manager is. Let him continue to sound stupid.
Gentlemen, let me turn the discussion to the other side. Something else that came out of the VP's press conference. He gave the impression that citizens ought not to critique a judgment of the court. What sort of society are we descending into when the right of a citizen to speak,
all
freedom
citizens accept him.
What are we descending into when we cannot critique, and someone as eminently qualified and experienced as Dr. Vince cannot critique a judgment using his vast knowledge to say, look, this judgment is not serving really the best interest of the state? What sort of a society are we descending into?
Well, Beverly, I think you should qualify that. All citizens are not allowed to critique except him. That's what dictators and autocrats do. So that's that doesn't surprise me. That's what he means. All citizens except him shall not criticize and use your knowledge to educate the people.
Dr. Vince,
I mean, it goes without saying that the Alliance for Change has always been most respectful of the court, most respectful of our judges and of our magistrates and our attorneys. Yes. But that does not take away our right as individuals, as a party, to examine rulings and to give an opinion on such rulings. And this vice president, I can't recall him saying anything when one of his former ministers called for the Chancellor and the Chief Justice to be defrocked. In a Facebook page, the former minister called for these eminently qualified judges to be defrocked. We're just critiquing a ruling, but the former minister called for them to be defrocked, and the vice president said nothing.
Yep. And then of course, his quotes are here too to say that
in Dr. Vince's article,
they must have predictable decisions, and they're treading in murky waters. This comes from his own mouth. And then the defrocking, I forgot about the defrocking, which is to me that's
It is stripping them, stripping
absolutely,
them
Mhm.
of their robe and of their career.
yeah,
Professor Shamir, you were about to
I
say
remember
something.
reading the article and I learned the reasons for the constructive evaluation. It was not saying no, but there were reasons, scientific, explanatory reasons with simple common sense people can understand. So it was not something demystifying in rocket science. No, Dr. Vince explained his three, I remember it was three reasons, and he gave the reasons why he was making this observation, and he was making a constructive critical observation. But in an
yeah,
autocratic society, that is not allowed. And don't forget, Vice President Jacques Dewey, where was he trained? Patrice
yeah,
Lumumba University in Makuba. Who
yeah,
was
You
his
know,
professor?
I would want to give the kudos to the judge, to the chief justice. The chief justice, may have ruled on the law, because
Yes.
judges cannot go outside the parameters of the law. They're curtailed by what the law provides. So even if the chief justice would have ruled on what the law provide, here is Dr. Vince, an expert in the field, given an opinion. Is it now time for the legislative body to maybe have set up a think tank with professionals like Dr. Vince to examine the laws to see, well, as the saying goes, if the law is an ass?
yeah,
Are we at
Yep.
that
Yep.
stage where
Yep.
we need
Yep.
to examine the law?
sure.
Okay.
And the law is no different to even because environmental laws and regulations is the same thing. Things change over time,
Yes.
science change, and you adjust your laws accordingly. You don't go back, you don't keep the cavage laws in place.
Mhm.
The law has to be practical with the conditions that exist. That's why you always have amendments to even the constitution. As I the
Yeah.
constitution
Yeah.
is the changing conditions.
Bev, I got a note to remind you about the Venezuela situation and the government not informing us. Today's Kaicho News reporting what the people are saying, and the GDF Omar Khan visiting yesterday. And can you
E-
comment on
Um,
not informing the government, not informing us, the citizens?
I think one of the greatest fear in our population today is that we have so many Venezuelan nationals, persons who would have come over the border from Venezuela, residing here, working here. Do we have the enemy within? I think that is the fear of the Guyanese citizen. You
Yes.
know, do we have the enemy within our borders? Are we going to be, is a conflict going to arise right within these 365 square kilometers? The president met with the leader of the opposition, I think, once on this matter, but the Foreign Relations Committee of the National Assembly, that has not been meeting. And so the opposition has not been briefed, has not been brought up to date on what is happening. A task force, to the best of my knowledge, has not been set up to deal with this matter, a parliamentary task force or parliamentary led task force. And so the opposition can only talk about what we're picking up from our members and our supporters at the border. And I think this is the biggest failure of the PPP government, that here it is, our sovereignty, our territorial integrity is being threatened. And there is still the them and us mentality, the them and us attitude. If it is one thing where Guyanese can unite and Guyanese can hold a single position, it is on the integrity of our nation. It is
Yeah.
on the sovereignty of our land. And
Yes.
but the opposition is being locked out. There is no national plan, so to speak, in light of all these threats and all the things that we're hearing. Some may be rumors, some may be true. We're seeing images. Um, Professor Shami, while I was having my technical difficulties, I saw you sharing images. I heard you talking about what happened in the past, but that is not happening now. And I think all of that is lending to the fear that is arising within the Guyanese people. What exactly is happening? That there is a paucity of leadership on this matter. And I think it is time that we issue a call to the President Irfanali, to address the nation on this issue, to instruct his foreign minister that he should brief the opposition and continuously brief the opposition on what is happening. What are your thoughts, gentlemen?
Agreed, 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 including civil society and the trade unions involved Guyanese. They're people with intelligence and street smarts and technical smarts that can help. It's not only one side have all the knowledge. No, no one is perfect.
I
Correct.
absolutely, Beverly. But again, let's call this government out for what it is. We all have recognized that this, what you're talking about there, Beverly, is the one Guyana concept. Okay? So let's call this government out. They do not, they say it because it's a good slogan to misinform and disinform people and to fool people. But that's what you would expect from a normal government. Look, even in Israel right now, Israel has now decided, because of the crisis, to form a kind of a unity government with the
Yes,
opposition.
yes,
Yes,
yes, yes.
These
yes.
are the type of crisis that warrants that. But I'll bet you my life that this government will never do that. Because again, why? Because it's a dictatorship. This guy who runs the government, this Jagdeo fellow, he's an autocrat. Like you said, he was this guy. You can't take away the stripe from a tiger. This guy was trained he's come from the belly of the beast in Russia, and we shall not. And I hope that the Western world does not let this guy fool them. He's a born bred Russian. So this guy's a dictator. So there's no way, Beverly, what you're saying makes too much sense for this vice president and the government. They will not. You would expect that anybody with some little common sense and little governance knowledge would say, well, look, let's bring the opposition together, which is what the first thing the leader of the opposition said. You recall, we
Yes.
Yes.
are hooked,
Ready?
hooked we joined to the hip with the
Yes.
government on this matter. We shall
Exactly.
not be divided. Did you ever
Not
hear
only
any
that.
such strong statement from the government? They're
No.
beating around, but the opposition, Mr. Norton, took that lead from day one. And
Yes.
you would expect that the government now, the president and vice president, would say, hey, let's take this very seriously. But it's not we alone. It has to be
A
getting the
national, yeah.
opposition and the other groups that you were talking about, Beverly. This now they can prove whether we have one Guyana or not.
Beverly,
You see,
Dr.
Dr.
Vince, we have
Vince,
5 minutes.
while we may,
Five
yeah, in
five minutes
5 minutes,
remaining. 5 minutes.
yeah, while we may talk about one Guyana, as in ONE Guyana, as I've said before, for the PPP, it is we WON Guyana. So the
Yeah,
mentality is different,
yeah.
Gentlemen, in the 3 or 4 minutes that we have, what are your closing thoughts, especially on this issue, the border issue?
Yeah, no,
Professor
I
Shamu,
I think
go ahead,
there's no
Dr.
question that it's a serious matter, and as we have all said here tonight, and everybody has been saying, this here is a national crisis, and
Yes.
we need to take it very seriously. And the one thing we have to always consider: every single Venezuelan was trained from birth that Essequibo belongs to them.
Yeah.
And now they're going to have a referendum that is going to strengthen that belief. And on top of that, now they're putting it into practice of bringing them over the border to say, okay, you're living in your land. So when they come in, if Venezuela decides to invade, whose side do you think they're going to be on?
Yeah.
It's not our side because they've been trained and indoctrinated. They belong to Venezuela. So this government has to come again and unify one Guyana for us to combat whatever may be on the be potentially out there.
Agreed. The president is celebrating his wife's birthday today. Hopefully tomorrow that he will summon a group, have a group formed, so have a crisis management. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not sure how many will know this picture. That picture is related to the PSA agreement. President Janet Jagan signed the PSA agreement. That is the world-renowned economist, Sir Paul Collier.
Oh, great guy.
He visited Guyana. Back channels reliably informed that he weighed everything into consideration, the geopolitics, 3 billion barrels of oil, and the 2% that daily the coalition is getting beat up for. It was okay by him because the unknown and Venezuelan at the border is like the gargantuans at the border. And what the general public might not know, and I've got it from my back channel, the learned Sir Sridhar Ramphal also gave his blessings on the 2%. So all the spin doctors jumping high and jumping low every day, beating up on the 2%, the monies that are now coming and being spent on projects upon projects, there was good evidence that the coalition government had, and they made a judgment. Because of that judgment, the oil billions are now pouring in. 2 and 3 billion is likely to be received by Guyana. Brother Vince, I see we lost Beverly. So,
Yeah.
ladies and gentlemen, we just 1 minute left. Thank you for listening, and our condolences to all those who lost their lives in the Israel and Gaza war, and hopefully there'll be better peace, and best wishes for their speedy recovery, and there'll be peace and humanitarian aid and a ceasefire, and all the hostages be returned. There's too much violence, and let's hope that Guyana, each one of us, continue to be safe and to be protected, but we need our government to be more protective, stop worrying with the roads and infrastructure for a while, and concentrate on Venezuela and our border. Thank you all for listening, and good night until next week, and happy 18th anniversary to the AFC on the 29th of October. 3 visionary, Honorable Raphael Trotman, Honorable Kemraj Ramchatan, and the late Honorable Sheila Holder and the team took that strategic decision for the Alliance for Change. Thank them all and the team. Good night. Be well with Allah, Bhagwan, and the African God of Peace, Motawala. Blessings to you all. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks,
Brother Vince.
everyone.
Thank you.